This podcast is brought to you by the letters B, E, and F, and by the number 5. What this means is that BuyEmergencyFood.com has agreed to give listeners of the Preparedness podcast at 5% discount on your entire order. The only trick is that you'll have to phone in your order. So get 5% off some great stores food. Go to BuyEmergencyFoods.com. Figure out what meets your food storage plan. Give them a call at 888-543-7345 and tell them you heard about them on the Preparedness podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Preparedness Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best in preparedness information. My name is Rob Hannes. I am the host and founder of the show. And as you heard my littlest son tell you, BuyEmergencyFoods.com is extending a 5% discount to the listeners of the Preparedness Podcast. The only trick is that you do need to call in and make your order and let them know that you heard about them from the Preparedness Podcast, and you'll get the 5% discount. All you need to do, as my son pointed out, is go to the site, figure out what you want to get, give him a call at 888-543-7345, tell him you heard him on the Preparedness Podcast for your 5% discount, and let him know what you want to order. Before we get into the Guns for Preparedness segment, I just want to cover some quick current events. If you have been looking at the Prepper News Watch that I've been putting out on the website Monday through Friday, you notice that there's a lot of economic or economy-based articles on there, and I've been trying to put those out because what I've been trying to do is lay a case that we do have an issue. If you are unconvinced that we have some economic problems headed our way, then I'm hoping that these will help educate you as to really what's going on. Or if you're more like me and need some occasional reinforcement from time to time, I think you're going to find it there. Typically, what I'm seeing are two camps on the economy thing. We have the unicorns and rainbows view that we get from the government, and then we have the this isn't good from just about everybody else. Now, the people who are saying this isn't good, they kind of vary on what may happen. Some see, a tremendous crash. Some see a not so bad crash. But I think most of them are pretty much talking about a crash. And I wanted to make sure that we focus on the economy and what's going on, even though I'm not covering it here in the podcast, because I do think that it's probably the single greatest prepper issue that we have right now that's going to affect us, going to affect everybody. The other issue that is very prevalent is the freedom issue of the Second Amendment. A lot of left-leaning, liberal-type people are trying to capitalize on the misfortunes of others who are the victims of gun violence, and they're trying to push legislation that basically either voids the Second Amendment or diminishes it or reduces its effectiveness. And I mean, they are just bandwagoning on here. And as a prepper, I think most of us should be interested in freedom issues because we want to be able to do what we want to do. We want to say what we want to say. We want to store what we want to store. And you may not be a gun guy or a gun gal, and that's fine. But you should realize that if they come for the guns, then they're coming for your food storage next, and then they're coming for your religion, and they're coming for everything else that they don't like, and they just happen to be whoever's in power. I mean, history shows us this. It teaches us time and time again, just like the economy. Those countries that embrace a fiat currency and start printing money out of thin air always end up in the same toilet. It's the same thing with guns. all the dictators of the world who have committed the most heinous crimes against humanity preface those actions by confiscating firearms from the population. It's history. It's how it is. So those are two main focuses on the Prepper News Watch, and I wanted to point them out because if you're not going there and checking out the stories, you probably should. Another story that came out today on the March 6th Prepper News Watch. It's at the top of the page, and it is titled Underestimating North Korea and Iran, and we are talking about EMP. The article was written by Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who is quite involved with high-level governmental agencies and organizations like the Congressional EMP Commission, and I think he's the executive director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, director of the U.S. Nuclear Strategic Forum. And so he has some information about this, in other words. In fact, he had a podcast called Impact Radio. I was listening to it a while back. I was just on iTunes trying to find it, and it won't pull up. And it looks like a lot of the site, his website is down. The site is there, but a lot of the pictures and stuff aren't showing. So I don't know if that means that they're in the process of shutting that site down, or if there's a server issue, or what's going on. But he's talking about North Korea and their nuclear potential. And long story short, what he's basically saying is, while a lot of people are discounting the North Korean threat and their nuclear arsenal, or their lack of it, quite the opposite is probably true, because you don't need a large-scale nuclear weapon to have an EMP attack. And that's exactly what people are saying, why we don't have to worry about North Korea, is because, all their stuff is low yield. Even if they did attack us, they couldn't get it over here. It wouldn't be very efficient. It probably would fizzle, and it's a very low yield weapon. So it's not going to cause a lot of damage. Well, they can cause a huge amount of damage with a low-yield nuclear weapon by creating an EMP attack. And we've covered all this before, so I'm not going to go over it again. You can go and listen to the past podcast on EMP. You can download the Kindle book I have on surviving EMP at the Kindle store. Go to Amazon and search for Preparedness Podcast, and you'll find the mini guide. So you can take a look at that, but I thought it was interesting is that, EMP is still a very real threat to us. Other things that are in the news is recently the Dow has hit an all-time high, and everybody seems to be fairly ecstatic about that. But you know what? So what? Quite honestly, the Dow has no bearing on the market whatsoever. What's happening is, high-level bankers are giving out free money to lower-level bankers, and they're spreading the wealth among their cronies, and they're all getting rich, and they're all pumping up that market and stuff. And, it's not doing anything for the real economy. And those are another series of articles that I try to post when I come across them on the Prepper News Watch here, as well as, I hit some science and technology and general prepping interest. And the point is I'm trying to give whatever information I come across that I think is preparedness related or things that we should know about. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and go to the website. Like I said, it's there Monday through Friday. Another thing you can do is sign up for the weekly preparedness tip. Those is basically an article that comes out every week about some preparedness-related tip. Also, that signs you up for what we're calling the newsletter, which is basically an RSS feed sent to your inbox every Friday, and you get a collection of all the posts that have come out in the previous week, including all those Prepper News Watches. So you can have easy access to that as well. Now, as you probably have noticed, I did not put out a podcast last week. I am still very much working on getting this next book out. That is the Preparedness Capability Checklist. And I'm really excited about putting this out because it really is a great resource, I think, for preppers, because it's unlike anything else that's out there. And I'm really excited to get it out and get it printed and published. And it's going to be available in print. It's going to be available on the Kindle. And I've been working hard to try to get this finished up, but As those of you who have worked on software projects or relatively large projects, you know that the last 20% of a project takes approximately 80% of all the work. And that's really what I'm kind of up against is I'm going through doing the edits, and then I'm going through basically a lot of my notes that I've taken across the years in my Prepper Notes database. And I'm cross-referencing against this checklist, making sure I've covered everything that I want to cover. And I'm finding things that I forgot to include, and so I'm going back and doing some rewrites. And then, of course, trying to do some formatting and other reworking of it. It's a lot of work. And, of course, I put a self-imposed deadline on it of end of January, which I completely failed to miss. And then I missed the end of February deadline that I posed on it as well. And so I'm kind of stressed out about that. And it would have been tons easier if I just would have not put a deadline out there and just wrote it. So a little bit stressed out here and completely skipped last week doing that. And that's why I'm wanted to make sure I got a podcast out this week. This is already the middle of the week, so I'm going ahead and hit it. In addition to the current events, what I really want to cover, and this is a sneak peek into the logic behind the preparedness capability checklist, and I want to be talking about the firearm capability checklist. And it's a little subset of the PCC in that it uses the same logic that you're going to find through the entire book, but just as it applies to firearms. Now, just to cover what the PCC is, instead of having a list of items that somebody else wrote and is suggesting that you buy, which may or may not be helpful at all, the preparedness capability checklist goes through and lists the functions or the capabilities that you need to have in order to achieve a certain preparedness level. So one of the sections in the PCC is called defense, and in there I list the capabilities or the defensive as well as safety and security capabilities that you need to have to be prepared. So, for example, I'm sure you've seen lists that make specific recommendations. Let's say I wrote a list and I said, well, you need to have a 22 caliber rifle, you need to have a 12 gauge shotgun, you need to have a 9mm Glock 19, and you need to have an AK-47. Those are my suggestions what you should have. Well, you look at this list and you're like, okay, well, I've got a 22 rifle. I don't like 12 gauges because they hurt my shoulder. You're a small statured woman or an older male or whatever. You just don't like 12 gauges. Let's say you don't like Glock 19s at all for one reason or another, and you don't have an AK-47. You have an AR-15 or a rifle that's on an AR-15 platform. That list has become worthless to you because it doesn't fall into anything that you need it to be. You want a list that's tailored to you, but somebody is giving you a list that was tailored for them. This is where most lists break down is that they're written by people who are making lists for themselves and then decide to go ahead and pass it around thinking that everybody should be just like them. If you're gluten intolerant, and somebody, lists all the food that you should have, and they list 300 pounds of wheat and 50 pounds of powdered milk and, 60 pounds of honey and 20 pounds of salt. If you have honey and wheat allergies, that list doesn't do you any good whatsoever because you can't have those items. And this is why the preparedness capability checklist is superior to those types of lists because it doesn't focus on my needs, it focuses on the things that you need to accomplish. And we're going to see this in this firearm list. Now, I'm going to go through the list quickly, and then we're going to go back and talk about it. So, the firearm capability checklist. These are the functions that you need to focus on when you're looking for what type of firearms to have. Target and practice, small game hunting, large game hunting, pest elimination, personal defense, perimeter defense, and long-range defense or counter sniper. Now, as you've probably noticed, I didn't mention any specific firearms in that list whatsoever. However, if you go through the list, you'll see that when you're looking at weapons, you need to make sure that you can take care of these items. So, for example, target and practice. You need to have the ability to practice dry firing your main weapons without ruining the firing pins. And you need a low-cost solution for target practice because, you do need to practice. It can be a lot of fun, but you don't need to spend a lot of money on there. So you might look at like having snap caps for your guns. Additionally, you probably want to look at having a low-cost solution for actually shooting, whether that is 22 long rifle, it's small 22 caliber pistols and rifles. Maybe get a 22 conversion kit so you can shoot your primary weapon but with cheaper ammo. You could also look at target loads, wad cutters, semi-wad cutters, lead bullets that are loaded on top of smaller charges so they're cheaper. Maybe do your own reloading, this sort of thing that allows you to practice and shoot at targets, whether for fun or for, improving your skills, but cheaply. The next on the list is small game hunting. This is the capability to take small animals such as rabbits, squirrels, pheasants, ducks, geese. This is, meat on the table sort of stuff. Again, large game hunting, capability of taking down deer, elk, bear, and the next one, pest elimination, taking out, the varmints and the pests, coyotes, gophers, snakes. Now, you may look at these and go, hey, wait a minute, I can use the same rifle for several of these categories. And that's true. And that's what you should look at. You should say, okay, I have a 22 rifle, and if I pair that up with some high-quality ammo, you might be able to use it for pest elimination and small game hunting and target practice and mechanical practicing. Yes, that one rifle could serve as those three capabilities. You may prefer using a shotgun for your pest elimination or your small game hunting, and so you need to take a look at that as well. Again, I'm not telling you what gun you have to go buy. This is just the capabilities that you need to make sure that you can take care of. Continuing on, personal defense. This is a weapon that you carry on you at all times during all tasks. Typically, this is going to be a handgun. When we're in a survival situation, especially, and during everyday life, it would be a CCW. You're not going to be carrying around a rifle with you everywhere. If you're working in the garden, whatever you're doing that needs two hands, you're not going to be necessarily having to carry a rifle or a long arm with you, but you are going to have your handgun with you. So this is your personal defense. This is typically going to be the first thing you're going to grab in the event of emergency. And, you should have it so that you're comfortable with it, you can shoot with it, you've practiced with it, but this is your personal defense weapon. Now, again, it doesn't say, oh, it must be a 9mm or it has to be 40 caliber or higher. Whatever you are comfortable with, because the first law of a gunfight is to have a gun. And it's much better to hit somebody with a 22 than it is to miss with a 50 cal. So you need to have something that's reliable, something that you can shoot well, something that you can shoot a follow-up shot with. It's not just a one shot and you're done. You need to be able to follow up. And if you're shooting a big booming gun that hurts your hand and it takes your sight picture off the target, that's not going to do you any good. You need to have quick follow-up shots. Then we get to perimeter defense. This is the ability to lay down high volumes of fire to repel an attack. It's a rifle that has a high-capacity magazine and has quick acquisition sights. Whether you use iron sights or a holo sight or a red dot, doesn't matter. Now, typically, this is going to be your AR-15s, your AK-47s, your FALs, your M14s, whatever you're comfortable with. Now, notice, we're not getting into the argument of which is better, 308 or 5.56. We're not going down that path because it doesn't matter. This is a personal decision that you need to make. You may already have all AR-15s or AK-47s, or you may be looking. You need to do the research, find out what you want to get, and make that decision of whatever rifle fulfills this need. Now, the last one I have on here is long-range defense / counter sniper. This is typically going to be a large bore rifle with a telescopic sight. It's not saying that it has to be a semi-auto. It's not saying it has to be a 308. It's not saying it has to be magazine fed or any of this stuff. Because if you're a hunter and you go deer hunting or bear hunting or elk hunting, chances are you already have a rifle that meets this need. There's no need to go out and get another one because you have something that fulfills the need. And that is what this is about, is making sure that the preparedness equipment you have fulfills these functions and capabilities to make sure that you can accomplish the job, which is survival. Another way of looking at this, or this sort of logic, is that the list is going to tell you what you need to accomplish, and you need to decide how you're going to accomplish it. That includes the skills needed to actually accomplish it. So, for example, if we're talking about you need to be able to start a fire, the preparedness capability checklist isn't going to tell you how to start a fire. You need to determine what works best for you. It's just going to say you need to be able to start a fire. Same thing with this firearm list. Here are the functions when you're saying, well, what do I really need guns for other than I like them? I mean, certainly have as many as you want if you like them. But when you're trying to figure out from a preparedness and a survival aspect, what do I need to do with my weapons? What kind of jobs will I be doing with them? This is what you need to take a look at. Now, you may be able to get through this list and say, you know what, I can take care of everything on this list with four weapons. And great. Then those are the only 4 weapons you need. You may decide that, I think I'm going to have 1 weapon for each of these. And that's fine too. Again, the list isn't trying to dictate to you what kind of weapons you need to have, what caliber. It's just saying, okay, when you are looking at firearms, here's what you need to be able to make sure that you can accomplish. And additionally, you should look at this list and say, okay, for example, long-range defense counter sniper. Well, if you don't know anything about shooting long range, then you need to work on getting those skills. That's sort of inferred and implied in this list, is that if you're going to say have a weapon for counter sniper operations, then you need to know how to run counter sniper operations. And that's pretty much the general concept for the entire preparedness capability checklist book that'll be coming out hopefully very, very soon. Now, continuing on with the whole gun theme here, we have this very real issue that we have going on right now with freedom and guns and the Second Amendment. I'm sure most of you who have an enthusiasm for firearms is following this. Quite the turnout that we're seeing. Usually what happens is politicians say, oh, we're going to ban guns, and then nobody stands up to fight, and we get some legislation pushed, and we're all moping around going, gee, this sucks. But this time around, we are seeing some proponents stand up. We have sheriffs, we have state lawmakers, we have a lot of people who are standing up and saying, no, this is not happening. We're not going to allow this to happen, and they're fighting. And you should lend your efforts to this fight however you can. If you're a marketer or a spread the word type of guy, or if you are an advocate or whatever it is, if you like to write letters to the editor, whatever you can do, we should all be doing our little part, because every part that we add to this movement is going to help. It's one of the reasons I try to include a lot of those articles in the Prepper News Watch. In fact, there are so many articles out there that I have to limit it. Otherwise, I mean, there could be 30 to 50 articles a day just on gun stuff, and I try to limit that because otherwise it gets quite unruly. But I have to say that it's a really good feeling to see all this effort come out and in support of the Second Amendment, because, like I said, through the Clinton years, it was kind of like shoved down our throats, and nobody really stood up to fight back, and that's kind of what I've expected this time around. But I've been very pleasantly surprised to see that's not the case. So let's all do what we can to keep this movement going. A couple other related issues I wanted to touch on, and that is I've seen some forums, some comments of people trying to find out how they can bury or cache their weapons. And I have to say I am very much against that, because if you don't stand up for your gun rights now and you bury your guns, when exactly are you going to stand up for it? I mean, you're going to hide your guns so they don't confiscate them, and you're going to stand by and let them take everybody else's guns, and then what? You're going to be stuck with a cache of guns that you can't pull up, because as soon as you do, you're going to be billed as a felon and be immediately arrested. That's far too late. That is not the time to stand up and fight for your gun rights, is when everybody else's guns are taken away. You know, if your plan is to bury your guns and wait to some future appointed time, I would ask you to seriously reconsider why you're looking at burying your guns. You need to stand up now. Now is the time to make your voice heard. You're not going to go to jail because you own a weapon, because you want to own a weapon, because you support the Second Amendment. You need to make sure that you're vocal, make sure that everybody who is anti-gun and trying to take them away and trying to repeal or diminish the Second Amendment knows and realizes that there are far more of us than there are of them, and that they're going to lose this battle, and eventually they do lose the battle. We are winning all over the place. But if you stick your head in the ground and become the quiet, timid mouse, and you bury your guns so nobody takes them away, why? What exactly are you? What's the end game there? I mean, I don't understand that. So I would ask you to reconsider that if that's your plan, that you really think that through and what the end game for that sort of scenario is going to be. And I think this is a good time to talk about the type of guns that are under the spotlight right now. And I am all for owning military-style weapons. These weapons are designed for coercive force against an aggressor. I believe we should own these because the Second Amendment is about keeping a dictatorship or a tyrannical government in check. That's why we have them. It's not about target shooting. It's not about hunting. So I do believe that you should have a military-style weapon if you so choose. I'm not going to certainly force it on you, but if you so choose, then you definitely should. However, I think that the focus, the spotlight that we have on these types of weapons is a good opportunity for us to take a look at some of the other options we have out there. And I was not able to go to the last gun show, so I'd be very curious to know if these types of weapons are still available, whereas your AKs, your ARs, and those military-style weapons are in high demand, in short supply, and very high price tags. Take a look at revolvers, lever actions, pump action shotguns, and not militarized, just your standard, your wood stock, maybe your plastic synthetic stock, but not in a military configuration. I really like revolvers and lever actions. I find them a lot of fun to shoot. They're very capable of filling a defensive role. For a home defense sort of scenario, I think most shots fired are well less than 6, 2 or 3 maybe, and so I think that you can definitely fill that role with a revolver. Now think about this. Let's say there was a car driving through your neighborhood shooting up at houses and stuff, or maybe something not even that overt, maybe an issue where you're not sure what's going on, and so you decide to run out with your rifle. And you run out with your fully decked out AR-15. It's got the optics, and it's got the laser designator and your flashlight, and you got the forward grip, and it just looks mean and nasty. Compare that to the reaction you would get if you stepped out with a typical hunting style rifle. They pretty much do the same thing. It's just that I think you're going to have less of a oh my gosh reaction from your neighbors, and you're not going to tip your hand as much as being a prepper by doing that. And I think that's important. So yes, I think we need to have the military style weapons, but in this age of the public being more prepper aware, you should give some thought to how you're going to be presented or how you're presenting yourself in public if you had a situation like that. Well, this is where I'm going to wrap up the podcast. Admittedly, this is not the original intent I had for this podcast, Guns for Preparedness. But honestly, with me being so immersed in writing this preparedness capability checklist book, I thought that I would give you a snippet or a sneak peek into the logic that goes behind it, because that's what this whole list is going to be about. I know a lot of the website people have seen older versions of this. I've allowed a few websites to publish older versions of the checklist years ago, and I get a lot of people come to the website through these sites, one of which is truthisTreason.net. That's a pretty cool site. You should check it out. But I know the interest is there, so I wanted to mention that if you have seen some of these older versions, then you kind of have an idea of what this is going to be about, except I've completely revamped it and expanded it, so it's actually vastly different and much more informative than these older versions existed. So until next time, enjoy life and be safe.